Hello watch enthusiasts! Today I'd like to produce my monthly video on the most interesting releases of the past month, which, as it's turned out, has been more interesting than most due to the potential for discussions started by several of these particular watches. And these watches range from a new direction for Grand Seiko to a thought-provoking Blancpain and a brilliant value Yema from France. But before I begin the video, I would of course like to encourage you to like, share and subscribe if you enjoy the video or find the content interesting. Also, do follow me on Instagram at the address which is now on the screen to access photos and content which is not normally available here on the YouTube channel. One watch which caught me by surprise this month was the Yema Superman GMT, a limited edition traveller's watch from this historic French brand. In recent months, Yema has delivered a very impressive range of pieces which have successfully provided a comeback for this brand, which was originally known for its dive watches during the mid-20th century. However, with this most recent release, they're providing a GMT watch to match their dive watches, whilst continuing the same sort of aesthetics. The watch is available in 300-piece limited editions, one for each bezel style, with a Pepsi, a Coke and a blue and grey style bezel available in aluminium of course. Interestingly, the bezels use the same crown-based locking mechanism as their dive watches, and do click with 120 clicks, but the locking system allows the bezel to be set with no risk of further movement once the crown has been screwed in. The cases appear to be excellently constructed in brushed steel, and with a very reasonable sizing of 39mm by 13mm in thickness, and with the same 300m water resistance as their dive watches. Of course, the watch does have a distinctively vintage appeal, thanks to a domed sapphire crystal, and a shape which appears simplified to make the piece lean away, really, from a luxury watch and much further towards a tool watch. In this aim, the watch does not feature an exhibition caseback, but instead sports a deeply embossed crest with the number of the watch and the fact that it is in fact made in France. The bracelet also shows a very different approach as it uses H-links which align with the case rather than the end links, thus giving a more seamless appearance, which is much more akin to an integrated bracelet than you would normally see on a conventional style of lug. The dial on the watch is another homage to the brand's past, as it uses the same matte black surface with a generous coating of luminova, something also seen on the very distinctive hands, traffic light second hand, and unusually the bezel. Internally, the watch uses the ETA 2893-2, which features a 42-hour power reserve, 21 joules, and runs at 4 Hz or 8 ticks per second. It is decorated and is adjusted to a very impressive plus or minus 6 seconds per day by Yema. Now, of course, this isn't a chronometer rating, but it does show quite a lot that the brand is prepared to test their watches and to make sure they are running very accurately before selling them, especially at this price range. And importantly, whilst this is a very reliable Swiss movement, the rest of the watch does fall under the category of made in France, which I think is impressive and something nice to see on a watch of this sort of variety. Overall, therefore, considering the limited run of these watches, the design and the quality which Yema is becoming known for, I am rather impressed with this piece for €1,499, and this does create a competitor for the now sold out Zodiac Aerospace GMT. And in fact, with 100-piece limited editions of each version of this, it is more rare a watch per version than that Zodiac, which I think will create an interesting sort of new area in the market for these more affordable GMT watches with a very standard but robust movement and good build quality. A watch which I'm keen to discuss in this video is the new Girard-Perregaux 1966 Blue Moon, a watch which very successfully demonstrates that this brand can keep reinventing itself. Of course, Girard-Perregaux is an extremely seasoned brand, with a remarkable history since its creation in 1791, including in fact the creation of arguably the first man's wristwatch in the late 19th century for the German Navy. However, in recent years they've successfully restored their position from a slump of sorts, and shown that they can produce a varied catalogue with dressed watches and luxury sports watches alike, which are all exquisitely designed and pretty brilliantly made, like the Laureato for example. To my eye, this variety has allowed the brand to become at once a recognisable name for excellent quality, but also whilst retaining a sense of discretion, thus making it extremely exciting for me. The watch in question, however, is a play on the mid-century dress watch, albeit brought up to a more modern size of 40mm in diameter, but still retaining the narrow, detached lugs and thin bezel around the sapphire crystal. The hands are also deliciously elegant, with curved and polished leaf hands for both the time and pointer date, and with a Flieger-esque second hand with a large counterweight. Such elegance is continued in the subtle baton-style markers and moon phase at 6 o'clock, and this is all powered by a conventional but luxuriously finished in-house GP03300-115 automatic movement, which has a 46-hour power reserve, 27 joules, and beats the rate of 4 Hz. However, this is where the simplicity ends, as the case, which should seemingly be polished steel or gold, is presented in bead-blasted stainless steel with a diamond-like carbon coating to give a dark, matte effect. Furthermore, the dial is given elegance and a deep fumé blue finish, which is given a sunburst effect with concentric patterns as well, all to really augment the interest to this watch, and the fact that this watch is very different to other options on the market for dress watches. And best of all, this watch is not a limited edition, thus giving yet another spin to Girard-Perregaux amongst their other watches in their collection, for a price of 8,950 Swiss francs, which is certainly no small sum, but for the quality you're getting, I think this is a very interesting proposition. The next watch is a divisive one, and for several reasons which I'd like to address in due course. And this is the Blancpain 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe limited edition for Hodinkee, a $9,900 luxury dive watch, which you can't buy anywhere because it's sold out almost immediately. I must admit there is a whiff of Speedy Tuesday to this one, but first I'd like to talk about the watch itself. The watch takes the form of a 38mm by 10.77mm thick stainless steel 300m dive watch, which shares much of its external case with the 38mm version of the regular 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe. Likewise, the bezel design and material are both carried over from the regular watch, as the insert is constructed from black ceramic with liquid metal markings for durability, as we've seen on Omegas for quite a few years now. And to my eyes, this watch has benefited from the choice of the 38mm case, as this changes the proportions of the watch so as to make the bezel appear larger and more dominant. And I'm not really one for smaller watches. I like small watches, I like larger watches. It's not really a problem for me. But I do appreciate this change because of that proportional difference, which you do see on this case size difference. Inside the watch beats the caliber 1153, as seen on the standard model, with automatic winding, a silicon hairspring, and a full 100-hour power reserve to give a full 4 days before being wound or worn. The movement, whilst sober in its decoration, does feature entirely expected levels of quality, with Geneva striping and a bespoke black-gold rotor, with Hodinkee embossed on the surface of it. Unsurprisingly for a Blancpain, the finishing is excellent, with an entirely brushed finish of the utmost quality and sharp bevels down the sides of the lugs. In addition, the crown remains unguarded to give a distinctly vintage look, clearly modelled on the 1953 original, conceived for the French Navy. This theme of vintage style is most evident on the dial, where Hodinkee have removed the retro-futuristic applied white gold markers and squared syringe hands of the standard watch. In their place, Hodinkee have taken things back to basics, with painted numerals in an aged tan luminova colour, which have a sharper, more modern feel than those on the original, a fitting change for the modern Bathyscaphe case. The hands have also been updated with white paint and a much more military, simple style, whilst the date has been removed entirely. However, I feel the debate as to my thoughts on this watch hinge more on the style of the release than the watch itself. Certainly I'm sure that many will be disappointed that they were not able to get hold of one of these 100 pieces due to the fast sellout time. However, I'm of the opinion that if people are willing to buy the watch, then it makes perfect sense for Hodinkee to produce it. After all, the advertising for the watch with a diver amongst a forest of kelp and a website page with the depth increasing as you scroll down really is superb. And the method of release does seem to be rather lucrative for a site like Hodinkee, really making it a very sensible choice for a website of this sort. And so admittedly I would level the criticism that the watch is a tad generic, as it follows the possibly overplayed vintage no-date dive watch style. But with that being said, I hope that it makes people aware of what a brilliant watch the standard version is, and really how much you're getting for your money. When one thinks of a two-tone GMT watch with a rotating bezel, let's face it, Grand Seiko is not the brand which springs to mind. However, Grand Seiko have spent the last couple of years adapting to suit a different audience, and one which may very well look to Rolex, thus making the decision to create their own spin on the steel and gold GMT watch, a thoroughly reasonable one. The watch in question is the Spring Drive SBG 248, a two-tone variant of the very well-respected SBG 201 in stainless steel. The watch is priced at $11,500 or €12,500 due to differences between local prices, but in either case, this is a watch which directly competes with the GMT-Master 2's segment. The case of the watch is 44mm by 14.71mm in height, in stainless steel with an 18-karat gold bezel and matching crown fitted with a sapphire insert. I must say I'm rather glad the case of the watch has remained in steel, as this allows one to enjoy Grand Seiko's legendary Zaratsu polishing technique, which yields a level of polishing without equal. The size of the case has also allowed the watch to retain a 200 metre water resistance, thus giving a certain degree of practicality back to the watch. However, looking past the case, the watch uses blue to offset the rich colour of the gold, with a sunburst blue dial and matching 24-hour chapter ring alongside a blue sapphire bezel. The aesthetic is certainly striking by comparison to the very traditionally subdued Grand Seiko look, but does work to create an interesting alternative to Swiss counterparts. Naturally, the internals of the watch are something truly remarkable, with the caliber 9R66 being used, as it is indeed in the stainless steel version. And this movement offers automatic winding, a 72-hour power reserve, and exquisite finishing throughout. However, aside from the independent GMT function, the real pièce de résistance is really the spring drive technology. And this removes the need for a balance wheel or a conventional escapement by instead using a mechanical movement to power a glide wheel and electrical brake, thus allowing a completely smooth run for the seconds and an accuracy of a scarcely believable plus or minus 15 seconds per month. And this is particularly impressive because whilst one can make a mechanical watch this accurate, it's incredibly difficult to make a mechanical watch run at this accuracy consistently. But with this sort of technology you're able to have this, and of course the finishing of the movement is also superb, just adding to the general enjoyment of this watch as a luxury item. I will be very curious to see how this piece does, because during this transitional phase as Seiko has risen in price to the point of interfering with Grand Seiko, it seems that Grand Seiko aimed to take a more Swiss approach to design and sales. I certainly accept this is inevitable as the watch market changes, though I can't help but feel that Grand Seiko is sacrificing some of its own identity in order to follow a more Rolex-like business model, so I'd be very curious to hear what you think in the comments down below. As has been very heavily publicised over the last few weeks, the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landings has come at last. Naturally, this was not a date to be missed for Omega, for which this event has veritably defined the Speedmaster professional and its given market segment. Earlier in the year we were made aware of the fact that, despite the creation of the new caliber 3861, a coaxial master chronometer version of the venerable 1861 Moonwatch movement, Omega has recreated the famous caliber 321 for a limited run of timepieces. However, until this point, both previously released commemorative editions featured the newer movement rather than the column wheel 321 model. All this has now changed with the release of what is presumably the most luxurious of the special edition Speedmasters this year. Starting with the movement, this watch has internals modelled directly on the Speedmaster which reached the moon with Apollo 11, and has a gold-plated version of the caliber 321 with a 44-hour power reserve, 17 joules, and a column wheel to control the chronograph. The result is a beautiful but rather nostalgic movement thanks to its low beat rate of 18,000 vibrations per hour and its construction which is entirely free from modern innovation, instead going for the classic charm of this vintage movement. Externally, the case is the familiar professional shape, but now made from an alloy of platinum and gold to give a particular colour. Where vintage touches are concerned, the dial features the text from 1960s Speedmasters, whilst the logo is applied as it was on the original. More eagle-eyed viewers, if you'll excuse the pun, will also have noticed the dot over 90 bezel insert, which is taken from the original, whilst the second hand is the shape of those used in period thanks to a narrow width. However, this is not a vintage remake, as the domed crystal and exhibition caseback are both sapphire and the bezel is glossy black ceramic in the place of aluminium. The dial also sees major updates as applied markers and polished hands in white gold give a more luxurious feel to an originally utilitarian design. The dial itself is constructed from polished onyx, whilst the subdials are slices of lunar meteorite, just adding to that lunar connection. Omega has shown itself to be reluctant to reveal how many will be sold and at what price, though we can assume that it will remain a limited number due to the nature of the commemorative watch. The fact that Omega will only make 2,321 calibers per year, of which we can assume many will go into another model, also reinforces the point. Of course, I'd be lying if I said I don't like the look of this watch, although I do wonder whether a full replica of the original is in the pipeline. Anyway, I would like to conclude the video there, but do tell me what you thought of these various watches in the comments down below, as I suspect several may be rather divisive. But if you enjoyed the video, do like, share and subscribe to help the channel and see more content here in future. Thank you very much for watching. This is Arm on the Watch Guy, out.